The rain had just started falling over Seattle, Washington, when a black luxury car stopped in front of a quiet café. Inside the car sat a man who once ruled boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, but now he could barely move his own legs. Jonathan Carter, a 42-year-old millionaire known across the tech industry, stared blankly through the window. 3 years ago, he had everything: success, power, admiration. Then one terrible accident on a rainy highway shattered it all. His spine was damaged, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors saved his life, but they couldn't return the life he once knew. Tonight, he wasn't here for business. He was here for something that felt even stranger, a blind date arranged by a charity volunteer who insisted he deserved one more chance at happiness. Jonathan almost laughed at the thought. A paralyzed millionaire on a blind date. To him, it sounded like a cruel joke. Before the story continues, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to the channel if you believe people deserve second chances in life. Jonathan adjusted the blanket covering his legs as his driver rolled the wheelchair toward the cafe entrance. The smell of coffee and cinnamon filled the air as people chatted softly under warm lights. Couples laughed together at small wooden tables, and for a moment Jonathan felt like an outsider looking into a world that no longer belonged to him. He was used to being admired for his confidence, his sharp mind, his unstoppable ambition. Now people admired something else, his resilience. But admiration didn't fill the silence in his large empty mansion. His date was supposed to arrive at 7 p.m. It was already 7:10. Jonathan checked his watch, then looked away with a bitter smile. Of course. Why would anyone actually show up? People liked the idea of helping him. But sharing dinner with a paralyzed millionaire who had lost his spark. That was different. Another 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The waiter politely asked if he wanted to order something while he waited. Jonathan shook his head. He was about to tell the driver to take him home when something unexpected happened. A small voice broke the quiet moment beside his table. A little girl, no older than 6, stood there holding a tiny purple backpack. She had curly brown hair tied in 2 loose ponytails and bright curious eyes. She looked up at Jonathan without fear, without pity. Just curiosity. Jonathan blinked, confused. Children usually stared at the wheelchair for a moment before their parents quickly pulled them away. But this little girl stepped closer. She studied him carefully, then smiled with innocent confidence. After a few seconds, she said something that made Jonathan freeze. "Mom is coming." Jonathan frowned slightly, unsure he heard correctly. The girl nodded proudly as if she had delivered very important news. Then she climbed onto the chair across from him like she had known him for years. Jonathan looked around the cafe, half expecting someone to rush over apologizing. But no one did. He cleared his throat, unsure how to react. The girl simply sat there swinging her legs and watching the rain outside. Minutes later, the cafe door opened again. A woman stepped inside, shaking rain from her umbrella. She looked around the room anxiously until her eyes landed on the little girl. Relief washed over her face. She walked quickly toward the table. She looked to be around 34, with dark hair pulled into a simple ponytail and tired but kind eyes. She wore a modest blue coat and carried the quiet strength of someone who had seen difficult days. When she reached the table, she placed a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. Jonathan expected embarrassment. An apology. Instead, the woman looked directly at him with calm sincerity. Her name, she explained, was Rachel Morgan. And yes, she was his blind date. Jonathan was speechless. Not because she brought a child, but because she didn't look uncomfortable, nervous, or forced. She looked genuine. Rachel explained that she almost canceled earlier that evening. Her babysitter had suddenly backed out, and she didn't want to bring her daughter along. But the little girl, Olivia, had insisted on coming because she wanted to meet the man Mom keeps thinking about. Jonathan couldn't remember the last time anyone thought about him like that. At first, the conversation was simple. Rachel asked about his work, and Jonathan spoke carefully about the company he built, a technology firm now worth hundreds of millions. He told the story without pride, only honesty. Then Rachel shared her own life. She worked as a pediatric nurse at a nearby hospital. Life hadn't been easy. Olivia's father had passed away when she was only 2. Since then, Rachel had focused on raising her daughter and helping sick children every day. Jonathan listened quietly. For the first time in years, someone wasn't asking about his money or his accident. They were asking about him. As the evening continued, something strange happened. The heavy silence that usually followed Jonathan everywhere slowly disappeared. Olivia told funny little stories about school. Rachel laughed softly. Jonathan even caught himself smiling, something he rarely did anymore. At one point Olivia leaned forward and asked the question adults were usually too careful to ask. "Does your chair make you sad?" The cafe grew quiet in Jonathan's mind. He thought about the years of anger, frustration, and loneliness. Then he looked at the little girl's honest eyes. "No," he said slowly. "It just reminds me that I'm still here." Olivia seemed satisfied with that answer. The rain outside finally stopped. 3 hours passed without Jonathan noticing. For the first time since his accident, he didn't feel like a broken version of his old self. He felt like a man rediscovering life again. Before we continue to the ending, please take a moment to comment the word hope below if you believe life can surprise us when we least expect it. When the evening finally ended, Jonathan expected Rachel to politely say goodbye and disappear into her busy life. Instead, she paused beside his wheelchair near the cafe entrance. She didn't look at the chair. She looked at him. She said something simple but powerful. She told him that when Olivia first saw his photo earlier that week, the girl had said something strange. She said he looks lonely. Rachel smiled softly. "But tonight," she said, "you look happier." Jonathan watched as Rachel and Olivia walked toward their car. Olivia turned and waved excitedly before getting inside. For the first time in years, Jonathan didn't feel like the rain had washed away another empty evening. It felt like something had just begun. Not a fairy tale. Not a miracle. Just the quiet possibility of a new chapter. Sometimes life doesn't send grand solutions. Sometimes it sends a small voice saying only 3 words. "Mom is coming." And suddenly, the world doesn't feel so empty anymore. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes kindness can change lives, and subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. Because sometimes the most powerful moments in life begin when we stop believing they can happen at all.